And good day, good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to Splendid Isolation number 17. And I'm going to do what I usually do and play us a bit of a tune to start us off with. Okay, that was the Navy Day March from the band of Her Majesty's Royal Marines. And the opening and closing tunes that I'm going to play today both come from a channel I discovered recently called Patriotic Archive, which is full of some really good patriotic and military music, not just from Britain, but from all over the place. And I do suggest people go and subscribe to his channel. Okay, I'm going to do what I usually do, go around and ask people for anything they particularly want to bring up to start with. I'm going to start with Adaman because he wasn't on the stream the other day. Good evening, Adaman. I think he's muted at the moment. Okay, we'll go to Sojo. Sojo, anything you want to particularly talk about today?
Not really, but I'm going to have to depart in a minute. I'll be back. I'm just waiting for a coffee to brew on the stove. So it's a bit of a fumble, but I'll be back. I promise.
Yeah, no worries at all, man. Rollo, anything you particularly want to bring up today?
Well, I've been following the latest battle in the culture war, which unfortunately has become the sad death of the late Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, of course. And there was a message particularly, I think, that got quite a lot of attention I think it was in like a official Labour Party group chat, and they were like just saying, "Oh well, this guy was really terrible, and we can't wait for the 90-minute circle jerk of what a great man this guy is." And on Twitter, there's quite a lot of people, especially there's a lot of people from Black Twitter who are like openly disrespectful. There's a lot of like just normal sort of like Mondeo man middle class people talking about like, how I'm really upset that he's filling the TV, and I'm really upset about this and this and that. And I think, I don't know, I suppose it's a sign that like Philip was to an extent like the last, like, I don't know, like he's one of the last like sort of bastions of or the royal family in general, you could say, but like one of the last like sort of bastions of the old order, right? And like a load of people like, they don't see value in it anymore. And I mean, they're just like, oh, I want to go back to watching whatever it is on BBC, which I can understand even from my perspective. Like, I don't know, I don't particularly watch TV, but I think the procedure officially is to have like 14 days of like just programming about that during the morning period. And I think, yeah, and obviously it's not of the same relevance as it was to people, so people are a bit upset like there's no Radio 4 and things like that. So well, not Radio 4, but BBC 4, sorry. But and you could, I can't remember exactly what it said in the group chat. They were like, "Oh, I can't wait for 90 minutes of how great he was," while not expressing the I don't know. He was known for making quite like I don't know, non-politically correct statements. I don't think he was like an out and out like, I don't know, proper bad bloke in that way. But made some funny statements. He was a man who had a great devotion to public service. I think even people bring up yesterday, like he went into like working class, like, I don't know, council estates, and just was able to get on with people. And he did it up to the age of like 90 whatever he was, full on public service, nearly 365 days a year, going to places, meeting people, being that representative of the British state. And obviously he fought very gallantly in World War II. So someone who I've got great respect for, and very, very sad to hear of his death, and especially the politicization of it as well. That nothing is sacred to these people. They go, yes, Prince Philip was. I can't remember. There was a tweet that got, I think, like nearly a few thousand retweets saying like Prince Philip was ugly. Prince Philip was a dead old racist, and he's in hell. There's loads of things to celebrate here, and it's like, I know, and it's a lack of respect for the old order, which is sad. But alas,
what happened to not speaking ill of the dead?
Exactly. Nothing is sacred to these people anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you say, and I'm actually going to bring up something about that situation in a minute. Let's move on to Adaman. Adaman, you got anything you particularly want to talk about today?
Well, I thought maybe we could go through some of Phil's base takes, but
yeah, absolutely we can. As I say, I certainly want to bring him up. Is there anything else you particularly think is something that's worth highlighting today?
Well, I mean, it's just going off the back of what Royal Oak just said. Actually, it's one of their lines, really. But aren't you kind of reminded about how you're on the right side of history by seeing how these people have come out like this? Like literally just frothing at the mouth to just slag off some old man.
Yep. And it's not just the left, incidentally. I mean, I know yesterday in the Discord, Right on Limbu was mentioning that there's people even on right-wing channels have been coming out with crap about him, which, again, I just don't get that, to be honest. I mean, as Royal Oak said, he fought bravely in World War II. He fought in some quite considerable battles in the Royal Navy. And I actually like the article that Colin Liddell has done on the Duke of Edinburgh on the Affirmative Right website, in which he says that the great thing about Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, was that he was unapologetically a royal. He didn't come out with all this pandering stuff that so many of the younger ones do. He just did his stuff. If he had royal duties, he did his royal duties. He certainly did lots of stuff for the military, and including for military charities and stuff like that. So, I've got nothing against the man at all.
Yeah. What was the thing on his military service? Didn't he Didn't he volunteer to the Royal Navy? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, he was an officer in the Royal Navy. He fought, for example, at the Battle of Mapatan, which was a huge battle against the Italians in the Mediterranean in the middle of the war. And got a gallantry medal, I believe, or mentioned in dispatches, or a gallantry medal, one of the two, I can't remember now. But he was certainly noticed for being especially brave in that action. And of course, he was by no means the Queen. He wasn't the Queen's husband then, so there was no particular reason to notice him for that reason. And can I also just say hi to Faust in the chat? Nice to see you here, mate. I'm still hoping to have you on a stream in the not too distant future. I don't know. I think that a lot of the younger royal family, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Charles, I've got to say I'm not. I don't mind his son and his wife, they seem okay. But even they are like, there's this constant apologetic stuff, you know? They somehow think they should apologize for being the royal family, which is not what they're for. You know, they're the head of state, or the Queen's the head of state, and they are kind of like the representatives of Britain, and they represent British history and continuity and all that kind of stuff, or at least they should.
Yeah.
I think so second to what you said. I think there was like certain channels where you were seeing. I know I had a look on Telegram, which is probably like usually a terrible idea, but I was like, oh, well, I wonder what their reaction to it is, and it's pretty much as you'd expect. I think someone was like saying, "Oh, death to all, death to all, death to." I can't remember exactly. I probably don't want to repeat it, to be honest, but I mean, it's as you'd expect. Some people were quite conciliatory. I think Duke of Durham was quite conciliatory. I think Morgoth was as well, but I think a lot of them weren't. And I'm not going to name names, but yeah, there's like, I mean, you're as bad as the left, and then after that, I think there was a rapper called DMX who died. I'm not particularly, a fan of that kind of music, but I think that there was more tributes paid to DMX than there was to the physical embodiment of the British state. So,
I have no idea who DMX even is. I mean, I detest rap music. So,
yeah, I actually left a few Telegram groups over the last couple of days over it. Well,
I don't use Telegram anymore, to be honest.
It's just disrespectful. I mean, the guy was a 99-year-old bloke who'd served his country in the war. Leave him alone, basically. Even aside from the whole like royal family aspect of it.
Yeah, like Daisy said in the chat, there's all these people talking about drinking children's blood and lizard people and all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name names specifically, but I left Brutus's old chat over it. Which obviously isn't his fault, but the people that have infested that cesspit.
Oh, you mean that there aren't really top quality people in Brutus's Telegram? Oh, I'm shocked.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I'm absolutely shocked.
I usually just sit on the sidelines for humour, but at that I was actually like, oh no, this is crossing some sort of line. I called him something to the effect of Jews, and then left.
I'm pretty sure the adrenochrome and all this kind of crap and there was people talking about that stuff. I'm much more concerned that goes on in Hollywood and amongst the elites in America than the British royal family, to be honest with you. But there we go.
Lizard people.
Which one of Brutus's? Because I think Brutus's group chat's been taken over by unwashed people now, isn't it? So,
that's kind of basically what I was alluding to. It's like people like. He begged me to join it, and I joined it, and then like 2 days later, I was like, "Fuck this," and I deleted Telegrams. Like, this is just gay. I'm sorry, I'm not sharing a chat room with fucking some faggot. Excuse my language. I'm not sharing a chat room with these people, and that's the end of it. So
I don't think
sorry, Duke. I didn't mean to swear.
No. Listen, people swear on this stream. I swear sometimes. I try to keep it down a bit, but I do swear occasionally. I don't think Brutus has much to do with that Telegram group anymore, does he?
It's not his fault. But
where is Brutus? Is he back online or what?
No, listen, the last message I got from him is that he's sorting some stuff out in his private life and he's busy, and that's all I can say.
Okay. I messaged him asking if Persians were white, and he did reply. So Persians are white, according to Brutus. So
yeah, I went out with a Persian girl many years ago when I was a very young chap, and she was definitely as white as I was. So I would confirm that in that regard.
Well, we've heard it. We've heard it from the author of the Brutus plan himself. So it's canon now. It's canon now.
But it's like it's like we were saying in the last stream. You know, you can criticize Brutus, and like there are things he has written that I don't agree with. There are things he says that I don't agree with. Absolutely, there are. You know, we're two separate human beings. But Brutus has actually written a book, which is more than most of us have. So there you go.
Well, you know, but if it wasn't for Brutus, like a lot of people wouldn't actually have any comedy. So you know, you can't really slag him off that much because you know he really is,
he provides endless content for some people. Yes.
Yeah, so you can't, you know, I don't want him to disappear. I like the trouble that he got into and like the sort of the dramas that we got into. It was funny. It was a good, and it was made for an engaging podcast, well, like, or stream or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm looking forward to when he comes back because you know, the more of that, the better. It was good.
Oh, listen, Brutus, as I say, I don't agree with everything he says by any means, but I think he's basically a good-hearted chap, and I don't think he is. He's by no means an enemy of the British people. Put it that way. There are many more people we could take aim at over Brutus.
Yeah.
Hello to Patriotic Archive in the chat. I was just saying, Patriotic Archive, I played a tune from your channel as our starting one. I'm going to play another one as our ending tune. And I have told people that they should definitely go and subscribe to your channel. It's very, very good. So, yeah, I think we're never going to agree on everything. You know, we're all adult folks. And have different life experiences and different expectations and all the rest of it. So we're never going to totally agree on stuff. But I think that the amount of flack that Brutus has got from some quarters has been well overboard, frankly. And that's probably all I have to say on that.
Brutus back in the day was pretty funny.
Yeah, no, Brutus is funny, absolutely.
Brutus.
Yeah, he's got a good sense of humour.
I'm just thinking back to when it all kicked off with Ralph. I mean, that was like peak. It was absolutely beautiful. It was just like just the way it unfolded. You can't script it. You can't script that comedy. He's just got this natural gift. And there's some people out there who like style themselves as comedians. They'll never be as funny as him. Never, ever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And also, the other thing I'd say about Brutus is it was Brutus's videos that first made me aware of the 37 group, and that there was a pushback by real British nationalists against this Nazi laughing bullshit. And that, as far as I was concerned, that was purely Brutus. And it was also Brutus who encouraged me to actually come online and to start streaming. So I'm not going to slag him off from that point of view at all.
For real, for sure. Yeah, he was unintentionally funny. Like his gaffes, his unintentional gaffes. It's just, I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I mean, he also, I mean, yes, he made gaffes. We all make gaffes. I mean, you know, name me the man who's never put his foot in his mouth. But he also made some bloody good points as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his, you know, his stream had like a nice balance. There was like the banter, there was the comedy, then there was this like sort of pie in the sky philosophy, and it just worked. Like people wanted to watch it.
Yeah, it was entertaining.
It's entertaining.
And, you know, yeah, if you're going to do this stuff, you have to try and be entertaining because people just won't watch it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can sit here all day long and give you shit take after shit take, but you need a balanced panel to like make it worth listening to.
Yeah, you people with different views, exactly. I mean, I think this is why this stream works reasonably well, is because we get a reasonable cross section of people with like we generally agree, but there's lots of like disagreements on detail and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but the good thing is that when we disagree, we have a nice argument about it. And again, I think that's like people don't want to hear everybody just sort of nodding their heads and saying, "Oh yes, I agree with everything you have to say."
Of course not. No, of course they don't. And also that's not the way men are. I mean, you know, I always say that my aim for these streams is to make them a slightly more organised kind of of a chat in a pub. And I think Brutus used to say much the same thing about his streams.
Yeah. Yeah, pub talk. That's the way he put it, didn't he? Pub talk.
No, can I just say for the audience, guys, you might occasionally get a bit of background noise from my microphone. We are having like huge hail and rainstorms, and I've got a kind of porch over the entrance to my backyard, which is Wrigley Tin, and it's noisy. So there's not much I can do about that. I've got the windows closed, but I don't have double glazing because it's not worth having double glazing in Australia. So.
Son of Britain in chat said republicanism is popular among some PA supporting chats. I've noticed. You see this with the stuff over the parties as well. Like they hate the Tories more than Labour, and I've always kind of felt that to them, like to groups like that in general, like treachery stings more than just being an enemy or being opposition or having an enemy or having opposition, I should say.
Yeah.
No, listen, I think, another manly thing, and, I think one of the things I want to encourage certainly is that men should be manly, is try and stand by your mates. I mean, obviously not if your mate's a murderer or a rapist, but I mean, if your mate hasn't basically done anything, if your mate hasn't done anything basically wrong, you stand by your mates. That's the manly thing to do.
Well, surely it depends on who he murdered.
Well, there's that too. Yes, there's that too. There is that too.
It may be a just killing in our eyes.
Yeah, it might not even, maybe it wouldn't even be murder. Maybe he's killed someone in a war or something like that. But I mean, totally different, obviously. But I'm talking about, if someone's not a very serious criminal, then by and large, you stand by your mates. That should be the normal, manly way of doing things. And if you don't, you won't keep mates very long, in my experience.
A lot of people talking about PA supporting the IRA. They don't use the British flag on their material because they think it will piss off people that support Scottish independence or Irish independence, and also having Keith Woods at their conference when he's made comments about the IRA. So
yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. Apart from the fact Keith Woods is somewhere between. I don't know. He's somewhere between an IRA supporter and a communist, but on the other hand, back in the day, the provisional IRA guys, when they weren't simply gangsters, which they often were basically Marxists. So it's no great surprise, really.
But where are all of these people now? I actually took a look at YouTube today and just typed in Mark Collett to see what came up, and most of it's there's a Mark Collett clips channel, which I'm sure that's really thrilling to watch. But the only video that he had up was a stream of Call of Duty or whatever.
Yeah, that's what he mainly does now is gaming, the gaming streams. He does gaming streams. That's his main deal.
Yeah, it's easy money now, isn't it?
Yeah, he sits there on gaming streams taking in. I don't think it's super chats, but another way of getting money in.
It's just so laughable, isn't it?
Well, there was I think it was the Independent or someone did an article where they're like, oh, he's using gaming to radicalize the youth. It's like, no, that's just a lazy grift, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got nothing to do at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sub to a few gaming channels on YouTube, mainly Total War and stuff like that, because they're strategy games I like. But I don't watch them for political content, not at all. So I don't know, man. To me, it's a joke. Like a nationalist playing games on a YouTube channel is just curious to me. To be honest,
I'm kind of not surprised because there really is only so much that you can talk about in it. It's hard to churn out content. We did a stream yesterday. Now we're doing one now, and it's kind of like, God, what is there to talk about? But it's just like pub chat. But for them who are they're allegedly trying to run a party, you can't just keep banging this drum about white people are dying all the time. It's just you're just gonna sort of bore people and just sort of go over the same content and just sort of run the wheels off of it. It's very hard to keep the momentum going, I suppose.
Well, Sargon's managed it for 4 years, hasn't he? He's done nearly daily videos. And there's plenty of other people like that.
Yeah, but Sargon
he-
does like news commentary and stuff like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, news commentary, and talking about what would PA do? Tie everything into white genocide and white people? I just like, how would that work?
I tell you what I think, Sojo. I think half the problem with PA is the people running it don't have the brains to make interesting stuff. I'll be quite honest. I think that's really what it is.
Well, speaking of brains in PA, I was thinking to myself, they literally cannot fill out an electoral commission form to save their lives. And it's like that NIP party, like they can't do it either. So it's like, these idiots that can't fill out these forms. I mean, if you can't fill out a form, what hope have you got of running the country?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, to be honest with you. I mean, look, the way I look at it is like these streams, there's so much we can talk about. I mean, on the last stream, we started talking about advice for young blokes, depending on what their sort of educational attainments were, etc. I mean, that's something useful we can do, because a young fella can watch this and he can say, well, yeah, there are things I could do. I don't necessarily have to go and get a job at McDonald's, So there's that kind of stuff. But if you look at the people who run PA, who are supposedly running this going to be a political party at some stage or other, if you believe them, which I don't, I just don't think they have the brains to make interesting content. They don't.
No, they don't.
People slag off Brutus and what the rest of it, and all the rest of it, but Brutus made interesting content. It was quite entertaining, as we were just saying.
Well, I think, if you look at this is not to slag him off or anything like that, but if you look at the metrics, and even he would complain, it's like he would say, I spent 2 hours making this video talking about, copyright, and only 50 people watched it or whatever. It's kind of like sales, really. You've got to sort of, get your message right and get people sort of hooked in and that kind of thing. It's not easy. Some topics people just don't care about.
Yeah, you've also got to try and be likable. You've got to be. People have got to like you, if you see what I mean. And it's quite difficult. It's difficult to like Mike Collett, really.
Yeah, even I was about to say there is a distinction between having a bunch of guys on a stream that sort of there's a like element of banter there and just people just having like a pub chat. That's one thing, but then doing a scripted video is like something else. It's very hard to make a sort of scripted video engaging, and it takes a lot of time and effort. But then I thought to myself, oh, Mark Collett, yeah. But even on stream, he's like this wooden, boring, monotone presenter. It's just, I mean, what was
hardly ever laughs.
Yeah, it doesn't have a sense of humor. Just stilted. What was the name of the program that you used to do? That it would take 10 minutes to do the introduction, go around the panel.
This week on the alt-right, was it?
Oh, so Slattery, what are you up to this week? Oh, well, my co-certified app is or whatever.
I tell you what I did see last week was that an Australian nationalist channel, and I follow it sometimes because they also have a New Zealand chap on there occasionally. And as you know, I'm trying to get a New Zealander to come on my Old Commonwealth streams, as well as a South African. If anyone's interested, please let me know. They had a PA supporter on that stream, and they didn't realise who PA was because this was an Australian channel. Yeah. And so this bloke was like basically beating up PA and saying they're the main nationalist group in Britain and all this kind of crap, which they're certainly not, in my opinion, anyway. Did anyone else see that? Adaman, did you see that?
No.
I actually put it on the Discord, and I made a couple of comments under the video, and I know our Australian bloke on there also did as well. And originally, the reason I noticed it is because Colin Liddell also put a comment under there saying, "Well, you do realise these guys are Nazi artists, don't you?" So.
Was that when they interviewed James Goddard? Was that then?
Yes, that was the one. Yes, that was James Goddard. It was. And
Another gem.
To be honest, I'm not particularly a fan of God. I think he's probably one of the better one of the bunch. To be honest, at least he seems to have like some.
It's a low bar, although.
Yeah, well,
it's a low bar. So yeah, all right, I see that. Hello, Anglo Nile in the chat. I just think the only reason they got on that channel is because the guys who were running it didn't realize who they were, frankly.
Well, isn't this the same with like Delingpole as well?
Yeah.
What's happened to him lately? He seems to have gone off the reservation.
Yeah, he endorsed he said, "Oh, can someone recommend me some Evola books?" I think.
Oh, Christ!
But we were talking about Evola the other day, so I mean, that's fair enough. I'm not going to slug him off for him liking Evola. I mean, I find Evola fairly heavy going, but a lot of people like Sojo like him, so
Well, hang on a minute. Whoa, hang on a minute. I never quite said that. I've read one book. I've read Ride the Tiger, to which I said, despite its name, it is not a survival manual for the aristocrat of the modern world.
But you said you enjoyed it, didn't you?
I did enjoy it. There were parts of it that I enjoyed, absolutely. And the other book that I've got is, what is it? Peaks and Meditations.
Meditation on the Peaks, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And because I do a bit of mountain climbing, so I thought, oh yeah, I'll read that. But I went into a couple of pages and then sort of forgot about it. But yeah, so it's not like I'm an Evola enthusiast or a connoisseur or anything like that. I've literally read one book. I mean, come on.
All I was saying is you enjoyed that book. So if Delingpole wants to read some Evola, I'm not going to slug him off of that. I'm generally speaking a supporter of free speech, apart from anything else.
Yeah, I get the. I mean, I look at Delingpole and think to myself, this guy looks like he's going in a certain direction, and we all know where this ends up.
Yeah, I think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna go that far, but we'll see. I mean,
next he'll be doing streams like AA saying, well, we know that there's an international clique that runs things, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, AA sometimes goes a bit near the borders of what's acceptable to say, shall we say? But I'm not sure how much he does that from real belief and how much he does it because, as we were saying the other day, like his income these days depends entirely, basically, on his internet content. So I don't know.
Considerable income at this point, but
oh yeah, I think he's doing very well, and I don't. Well, I mean, and good on him. I mean, I've got no problem. I'm actually a member of his channel. I give him like $5 a month or whatever the hell it is.
I think it's good stuff, actually. Yeah. But
I mean, he makes entertaining content. I mean, I don't like everything he does by any means, and I don't agree with all his views, like I was saying earlier about everyone, really. But he makes entertaining content. So
his streams are good. They are. He's able to bring together a lot of different people who gel well together.
Yeah.
Like I say, I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but I think as a format, it does work well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he makes entertaining content, and if you're going to do this stuff, you have to be entertaining because otherwise, why is anyone going to watch it?
Yeah.
Anglo Nile in the chat. AA is the academic agent who has a channel that's worth following, and I agree. Delingpole, who said that? Delingpole, Gamonista worshipper, pointed out that Delingpole had Ralph on, Indian Ralph. I thought that was a mistake, but I'm sure he didn't really know who Ralph was. So,
To be fair to Ralph, I think a lot of what he said in that stream was quite correct. He was basically saying like a lot of people are dragged into the far right because there's no like conservative alternative, and he was saying like, oh, don't jump along. I think the reason he did it was after the stream he did with I think it was Richard the Lionheart he did it with or someone. Like
that.
He was. I think the main concern is he didn't want like Delingpole to go down the PA route. So he basically came on and said like, don't, PA are only there because like there's no national conservative alternative. That was basically his position.
I was a bit disappointed actually because I'm pretty sure Richard the Lionheart, who I quite like, I think he actually recommended PA to Delingpole, didn't he?
You did, I think. I didn't actually watch the stream, but
yeah, I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it, but I didn't. I don't mind Richard Lionheart in general terms. Why he was recommending PA, I've got no idea. I mean, to me, it's like, do people not look at who runs these things? You know, it's not very difficult.
I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I have noticed that, like, there's a lot of ex-military who are the ones that show their faces, and you know, they seem to all stream together. And now I'm just thinking that stream the other night where that guy came on and you were like, hang on a minute, this doesn't smell right. The ex, who was almost Fed posty, and he was another ex-military guy. So there is.
Well, he claimed to be, yes.
He claimed to be, but it just, I've just seen that slight pattern there where, you know, the only guys that really sort of are prepared to show their faces are ex-military.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, the main reason I don't show my face is because of my son, because he looks exactly like me, for one thing. A much younger and handsomer version, of course. But honestly, like, my son looks exactly like me. I looked exactly like my dad. But I mean, I used to go to my dad's firm when I was like 14, and one of his mates would turn around and say, "Oh, you must be so and so son," you know, just as soon as I walked in. But anyway. That's the main reason I don't show my face. Like, because my son's serving in the British Armed Forces, I don't want to get him into any trouble. If it wasn't for that, I would show my face, frankly. Because, like, I'm semi-retired. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I think Richard the Lionheart's like, he seems to be like one of those like collapsitarian, like LARP in the woods types. To be honest, that seems to be my interpretation of him. But I think with PA in general, I think they correctly identify, or like, you know, people in that circle correctly identify, I guess you could say, like, problems with like liberal like modernity, and then like their solutions just go off like they're like, their solutions, they either don't have any or they're just completely ridiculous.
Or they're going to be a cul-de-sac is my problem.
Yeah.
By the way, hello, gentleman Adam in the chat. Nice to see you, mate.
I've seen him for a while.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to see him in the chat. I'm just thinking that. Royal Oak's correct. Like a lot of the problems that people in PA identify are absolutely real problems. It's the solutions they don't get right, because you're never going to get anywhere being National Socialist. It's never going to happen in the UK. It's a waste of time, leaving aside any moral stuff about it. And, like, frankly, I think the moral stuff is no real worse than the communists, to be honest. It's just never going to work. So it's pointless. And I think when you see it being encouraged, I think it's done deliberately to take real British patriots and nationalists into a cul-de-sac where they're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, but I don't remember seeing anything National Socialist in their 20-point plan. I think that's a bit of a red herring. It's their stances on sort of very, very deeply held social conventions in the UK and the mythology of the UK that's the problem. Like, you know, this idea that, you know, you're going to shit over Churchill. Like, why would you even bring that up? I mean, that's just not going to fly. That's like, you know,
but because they have to, because their hero. No, they do, because their hero is the Austrian painter bloke.
Yes, but
so they have to.
But they wouldn't say that. I mean, that wouldn't be.
But they do. They do say that. The leaders do. I mean, people like Colette.
Yeah, but it wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't come up in any. I'm trying to sort of steelman them in a way. I don't think that would come up necessarily in their sort of like political literature. I wouldn't imagine.
No, but on the other hand, I mean, there's also like.
But I know what you mean, that they're sort of skirting around. They sort of they indicate their sort of pro-NS credentials by shitting on Churchill, because that's an indirect way of saying it. It's like, oh yeah, well, what Churchill did during World War II was terrible, and it's kind of.
And we all know who financially supported Churchill before World War II, you know, and all this kind of stuff. That's what they say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
and to some degree, they're not wrong. On the other hand, my argument to that one is that Churchill took support from all sorts of people because he lived beyond his means. I mean, he used to write for some really quite racy American tabloids and stuff in the 1930s, merely to make money. You know, not the sort of stuff you would associate with Winston Churchill at all. But he lived beyond his means and therefore took money from all sorts of people. Some of them were the sort of people who PA go on about, but not all of them were.
Well, yeah, the other thing as well is like this whole the Eternal Anglo meme, right? That they like to push. First off, it kind of strips all other European peoples of any agency. You know, it's implying that like the Germans had no say in what they did, as if they couldn't help themselves. And on top of that, it kind of ignores like the fact that like because they'll bring up what was that group in America that sort of helped fund and keep Churchill afloat.
In America, I'm not sure.
Well, I might
the one they mainly go on about is the Focus Group in the 1930s, but that wasn't America. That wasn't America.
No, but yeah, there were a lot of American groups that were backing him. And
there were American people who were backing him for sure, because don't forget he had an American mother.
Yeah, and if you look at like the end of World War One, you basically see like the same thing there. Like America is just as guilty of this as anyone. And to appease the sort of white nationalist groups in America, that's sort of glossed over.
But then I think there's a lot of the PA stuff is also to do with that. Is like they get a lot of their funding from America, and they have to appease those guys, you know, and those guys are the way they are, you know. They're like unreformed George Lincoln, Rockwell's the Ballers, and this kind of stuff. So I think there's an element of that in it as well. But like I say, my main objection to it is it's not going to get anywhere. And that's why I think sometimes the British authorities support it clandestinely. I think that's why Mark Collette's still on YouTube, frankly.
I think it's hard to say. I mean, you could sort of look at it hypothetically and think to yourself, yes, cynically, it's good to have a really badly tarnished right-wing movement around to discredit any kind of nationalism. Yeah. But is that the case? Well, we don't know.
Well, we don't know, but I mean, I'm a cynical bastard. I've got to say I am.
But they're certainly not going to go anywhere, just simply on a technicality, because if they can't even fill out a form correctly to get registered as a party, then, you know, they can't go anywhere.
Which is difficult to believe that they can't fill out a form properly.
Which is difficult to believe.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I mean, somebody can go ahead and register a new organisation. It's a clean entity. Nobody knows anything about it, and then PA can move into that new entity, take their branding, take all their people with it, and they don't even have the nous to do that. I mean, you're dealing with literally idiots.
I can't believe that it's not more difficult to set up a tea company than it is to register as a political party. But there we go. That's just me, you know. But
I believe. I believe it's something in their constitution. I think those of us who've been around a bit longer might remember that there was a whole thing with the British National Party in terms of their constitution, in terms of letting in, I think it was non-whites. Of course, Chloe Core was the first non-white to join the British National Party. And I think Collette was firmly on the side of not allowing non-whites to join. I think it's something in the PA constitution that they refuse to bend on, which is the reason they can't get registered. I believe that may not be true, but
if that's the case, they're never going to be a political party, are they? Because that's not going to be allowed.
Again, that's super suspicious. I mean, Collette was in the BNP, so he knows full well that, you know, the BNP eventually had to bend on that anyway. So that's either. I'm a little bit skeptical of that, because I'm pretty certain that I've heard him say in the past that, we don't mind having mixed race people join our party if it's in the interests of our people.
So Joe, didn't Collette have the support that mixed race Scottish lady?
Oh right, Shazia Hobbs.
Shazia Hobbs. I'm sure he did. So I don't know how that's working then.
Well, the other thing as well, I mean, for me, this just comes down to the tick. I know that sounds silly, but I mean, he's literally a graphic designer, right? And admittedly, they're not going to let you in very easily. I know that Britain First, love them or hate them, they literally had to. I think they had to sue the Electoral Commission in the end
Yeah.
to be let in.
No, but I mean, again, that's actually not quite true. Britain First were a party, and then they got disbarred for fraud or something like that. So they tried to be reinstated.
But then look at the For Britain party, and they actually had to change their logo before they were allowed to register as a party.
But they didn't change their logo.
Yeah, they did. They just changed their logo because that's what they had to do.
The rules are strict, but they're not that strict. I mean, Hobbit went through the rules a couple of months ago, and he was like, "Oh yeah, guys, check this out. PA aren't going to get registered because they've got a tick in their logo, and it says quite clearly, like as plain as day in the documentation, that you can't have that." And it's like, it took Hobbit 15 minutes to go through that.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're either doing it on purpose and it's one big grift, and they don't have any intention of creating a party, or they are just literally absolute thick as shit.
But there was also, I mean, let's go back. I'll go back to that stream where what's his name was on the Australian stream that Royal Oak saw a bit of. The guy was actually PA are often slagged off because they're collecting names and addresses and all that kind of stuff. Now,
where's the proof of that?
Well, apparently they are. This guy, the Goddard, admitted it on that stream. He said, I'll just get onto it. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
They're told that they're collecting names and addresses. Now, I would not be giving my name and address to PA because I wouldn't know where it was going. But Goddard said, "Oh yeah, we have to do that because otherwise, how do we know if someone's joining us and they're an Antifa member or they're a communist or they're a police informer? As if that someone's name and address, if they're a police informer, is going to tell you." But then on the other hand, you also get PA having convicted pedophiles in their ranks, so they didn't manage to work that one out. So I don't know. It's a big mess as far as I can see.
It's kind of funny that Patriotic Archive last time was like, "Oh, what's your opinion on PA?" And we're like, "Oh, do we have to talk about PA again?" Now we've just talked about them solid for like 25 minutes.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I'd like, as long as we don't talk about them every stream, which we don't. Like we go like weeks.
Talked about them for a while, so
we go weeks and don't even mention the buggers. But and like I always have said, and I will continue to say, I think most of the ordinary, average PA supporters don't even know what the party is about. Really, they haven't looked at some of this stuff. Like many of them are genuine, good, patriotic people. They just don't know what the leadership is about.
I think just their the relative success that they've had. If you look at like most of Faust's daily 5 minutes hate against PA, if you look at the success that they have, pretty much if you go through any kind of these social media platforms, you'll see that most of the people that follow them are just sort of like further to the right than the Tories, but not full on neo-Nazis, right? And they just support PA because I don't know, they read their articles and they're in line with them on lockdown or on political correctness and things like that. And they're probably not in line with them on the other things. So I think there's a quite large segment of the population that's waiting for something else to come along, and I think that will show. I think PA originally, was meant to be, if people are familiar with the Tradition Britain group, it was basically meant to be like a more Whig natty version of that. I think originally it was just meant to be like they have a conference every year and just have like speakers and things like that. And it only really developed into what it is because I think there was somewhat of a demand for it from the kind of, I don't know, that kind of crowd. But I think there's a lot of people who are waiting for something else to come along, I think. So
yeah. I mean, as somebody in the chat said, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was now because there's a fair number of people in the chat. Someone said earlier that the only way real British nationalism, is going to get anywhere is some sort of an alliance between all these little parties. Well, I'm going to confirm what Levin Yildiz said and be a broken record, because I do say this on nearly every stream. These guys need some sort of a loose alliance to at least not run against each other in the next election. That's the only chance we have, really, of altering things, perhaps by forcing the Conservative Party a bit to the right in the same way that UKIP did over Brexit. I mean, I wouldn't mind if we could even force the Conservative Party to do a referendum on mass immigration, although I think the Conservative Party are probably quite scared of referendums these days. But there we go.
I don't think we will ever have a referendum ever again.
No.
Yeah, I think the Conservatives were thoroughly shocked by the result of that, because they certainly weren't expecting a no vote. And I actually think if they did a referendum on ending mass immigration, and that needs to be all it says, ending mass immigration, nothing about colour or race or anything else, I think that the most British people would vote yes, end it. And I think it would be a much bigger vote in favour of ending it than Brexit was, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, like Hitchens is right, Cameron was a political gambler, and that's the only reason why we got Brexit.
Well, they were also frightened that UKIP were actually going to break through and unseat Conservative MPs, which I think was very liable to happen by that stage.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Cameron was thinking they'd win Brexit, and that would effectively demoralise that group.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, he thought he would win because he had all the enormous propaganda of the state on his side. So yes, of course, he thought he was going to win. I mean, remember Project Fear? It was real. And then remember the crap that they did afterwards to delay everything under Theresa May and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, they got Alexander Johnson in, and wow, I'm not a big fan of his Brexit deal, but it's something anyway.
I mean, the thing is as well, like immigration, despite what people might try and claim, is still the biggest issue in politics. It's just the biggest issue that no one will talk about.
Yeah, because you're not really allowed to talk about it. You've got to be so careful what you say.
I think some of that's manufactured, though. I think a lot of people could talk a lot more than they probably think they can. But
yeah. This is something I wanted to bring up the other day on our NRX stream. Because the NRX people are big on saying, look, you really can't talk about this stuff. Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, some of them are actually. They are. They're saying you'll lose your job. Your wife will leave you. Blah 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 blah. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They actually do say that quite a lot, and I think, as Adam just said, I think that is a bit exaggerated, to be honest. Providing you're not calling for direct violence or being extremely rude and this kind of stuff.
I mean, there was a guy that lost his job at Morrison's I think it was Morrison's, might be somewhere else. It was a supermarket.
Yeah.
Posting a Billy Connolly sketch on his Facebook page.
And Billy Connolly was hardly a rightist, really.
Yeah, well, he said something that's now considered Islamophobic. So,
which is a totally made up word, of course, but yeah. I don't know. What do I think of the increasing amount of EU nationals leaving Britain? Don't care, to be honest with you. I don't think it makes much difference one way or the other. Some people will be happy, some people won't. I'm not sure. I mean, look, I really, if my base position would be Britain that was 90% Polish wouldn't be British. In the same way, if it was 90% African, it wouldn't be British, You can argue about what would be worst or least worst about those, but both would be bad.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. The numbers are quite big. But the thing is, the government was never ever going to allow, this labour force to actually leave. They're just going to replace them with non-EU nationals.
Well, as we were saying yesterday, the Hong Kong story and all the rest of it,
But even outside of that, the points-based system is basically a bit of a farce.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it doesn't totally work in Australia, of course. I moved recently, as you guys probably know. But where I live now, my neighbours are basically all typical Anglo-Celtic white Australians. Where I used to live, it was 45% Chinese, probably, in the middle of Melbourne. And not Hong Kong Chinese, like Chinese. That's an issue too. And Australia has had a points-based system for ages. but they also take in quite a lot of people under supposed refugee status and this kind of stuff. And also, Australia has had quite strong defence of its borders against illegal immigrants, but even that hasn't worked. You know, this is one of the things, like when you hear Nigel Farage and people going on about we've got to stop all these dinghies crossing the channel, and yes, we do, and I agree, it's something that needs to happen, and wouldn't be that difficult in my honest opinion. But that's not the major issue. It's the legal immigration, which is the real problem.
Yeah. Ben Gale said, you were just talking about AA and now you claim cancel culture isn't real. Well, I mean, no one's strictly claiming that, but I would also point out that, like, about the immigration thing and about what specifically what I was saying. I made a video a while ago. Don't bother going back and watching it, but basically in it, I brilliant shilling. I showed a graph, right, and the graph is from a Hope Not Hate report, ironically, and I think they're trying to show it as a good thing. But essentially, they show that since the 60s to now, to 2015, 80% of the country was against immigration. But they show another study that shows that only 15% of the country is against immigration. And the difference between the two surveys, and this is one of the things that people misunderstand about surveys a lot, the 80% survey just says immigration. The 15% survey specifically brings up race.
Yeah.
So immediately you start to realize that people are sensitive about that word. They're sensitive about the connotations behind it. And they back away from the argument quite quickly. And that's more what I'm alluding to, is that people can still talk about immigration as long as they are talking about immigration.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I make a point these days, I didn't always, but I do now, that if I always say, look, the most important issue is ending mass immigration. But that's as far as I go. And that's all we need to say is we need to end mass immigration.
I think you can leave it very open. Everybody knows what you're talking about, but you just dog whistle, really. We need to shut the borders. You know, we're full. And that's kind of the mantra, right? But you don't have to talk about, quote unquote, our people and the white race. That's going a little. You don't need to go that far. We need to just have the minimum viable dose. That's all we really need.
Absolutely right. And I'll give you another example. Carry on, because I'm looking something up. Go on.
Well, the other thing as well is that, like, if you they'll bring up stuff about white genocide, for example.
Yeah.
And that's they're not even strictly wrong, but it's such a huge misstep because they go, well, the word's got these strong connotations behind it. Yeah, it has, and the average person is not going to see these heavy connotations that are implied with that term. So that's a huge misstep.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, carry on.
It's like Sojo said. I think I don't know, if you look at the AFD in Germany or the Sweden Democrats in Sweden. I think, like, if you want to look at like what wins the best, I think most people, like, they wouldn't say, oh no, obviously I don't care about race. You know, all races are equal, yada yada yada. But if you put in sort of like, I suppose it's like the thinnest slice is all you need, like a thin like mental note, like, yeah, I am English.
This is where Ralph is right. This is where his analysis is bang on, because he's just like identified, the thinnest wedge, and that's all you need. You don't have to. Why push harder than you need to push? If the subtlest message and a little bit of dog whistling is all you really need, then why bring more variables into the equation to fuck yourself up? The more, if you think it's like going to court, the more you say, the more chance you've got of getting in trouble. So if you keep your message as simple and as milquetoast as possible in a kind of dog whistling way, then you really can't go wrong. And in many ways, that's what Farage has done.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing I wanted to bring up. Like, I posted some stuff recently on mine. I think I also put it in Discord. But like the UK. Britain is the 9th largest island in the world, okay? Now, it's the 78th largest state in the world by area, out of well over 200. But it is the 21st most populous state in the world, out of well over 200, which means that Britain is basically vastly overcrowded. Bits of Britain, especially England, are more crowded than parts of India.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be our message, in my view, because that's not pointing the finger at anyone particularly.
So what do you think about the environmental argument? Because beforehand, we've had this conversation before, and you've sort of not been very keen on it. Have you changed your opinion on that? What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's bulletproof. You know, you're saying, hang on a minute, we're destroying the environment, we're concreting over the countryside, the green belt, yada yada.
All of that stuff, I totally agree with. It's only when you get onto let's build wind farms everywhere and that kind of stuff that I don't agree with it.
Yeah, but that's taken on the green agenda, lock, stock, and barrel. I'm just saying, we use
preserving the countryside, maintaining some sort of wildlife and birds and stuff in England. All of that stuff, I'm totally behind, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of just normies get on board with. The idea of conservation and countryfile. They love that stuff.
Yeah,
they absolutely love that stuff. So if we say no more new builds on the green belt, no more cities, no more commuter towns, that kind of thing, no more migration. I think that it's bulletproof. As long as you don't bring race into it, there's no hint of bigotry, they can't touch you.
Yeah, no hint of even anything someone could call bigotry, even if it wasn't. I mean, listen, what patriot doesn't agree with England's green and pleasant land,
And it's like what leading on from what Sojo said, like people of this country, have always, most people have considered themselves like pretty politically moderate, right? And I think they will always do so. They've always been to an extent reformist. It's why probably we have like one of the only monarchies left in Europe. It's why we've had the Conservative Party in power, a very reformist party. It's why we've never had a popular revolution since I think the Peasants' Revolt, and I can't remember when that was, but. It's partly because we were on an island. I think Faust has pointed out it's partly because of that. But I mean, being a radical in Britain is total political suicide. I think as Jeremy Corbyn proved that perfectly well.
Yeah. Can I just say to Natterman Prime in the chat, we're not talking about a cowardly route to victory. We're talking about a route to victory. Victory is victory. It doesn't matter how you get there. It really doesn't. There's no such thing. Well, there is such a thing as a brave victory, but victory is the main thing, Like, I was in the military, mate, and if you could go and surprise the enemy and kill them while they were all asleep, that was good, Cowardly? Yeah, okay, who cares? They can't shoot back, that's good.
But efficient.
Yeah, efficient, and they can't shoot back. I'm sorry, I don't go with that. I'm not in this for glory. I'm in this to win. This is the point. It's like we need to win for our people. And there's no cowardly victory if you get a victory.
Yes, Mark.
Are you calling me Mark?
And believe me when I say...
These people.
But I'm not talking...
I'll pass it back to you, Duke.
Yeah, because I'm not talking about...
In the interest of white well-being.
I'm not talking about people. And
so
when
I'm
I say
pulling your leg, I'm pulling.
Yeah,
your leg.
All right, fair enough. Listen. Yeah, I really love the native British people. I think yes, there are assholes amongst them. Of course, there are. They're not all perfect.
Why do you talk about them in the third person all the time? You are British, so it should.
Well, I'm not talking about it. Well, all right, I'll say us, I suppose. But the native British people are basically good people. They're kind on the whole. They're not vicious, particularly. They can fight
they're too
hard
nice for their own good, really.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yeah, part of the problem is they are too nice for their own good. Too polite sometimes. But the idea that there is a cowardly route to victory is just nonsense. There isn't a cowardly route. There's a victory or there's a loss. And that's all that matters. And if you start talking, which is what we've been going on about here, Napalm Prime, if you start talking here about different races of people and all that kind of stuff, you will get shut down. But they can't do that if you don't do that. So why give them that leverage on you?
Well, Duke, I have a theory about this, and I actually do think that our good friend Brutus actually fits this archetype as well. But there are some people where the truth, trademark, is more important than actually winning. So the mere talking of the truth or their own perceived truth, say like the JQ, which I think is what drives the PA types. They're more interested in talking their truth and red pilling people on their truth than they are on actually getting the results that they claim to want to get. And I think that is, I think that's a sort of psychological characteristic of fringe people, because ultimately, to be on the far right, where we are, or again, are we? I mean, I'm not sure I really consider myself far right compared.
No, I don't think I'm far right. I think I'm on the right, but I don't think I'm on the far right.
Yeah, true. So because the window has moved so much, but for the people that are truly on the fringe of the right, the far right, I think that I just think it's something in their makeup where they actually value the truth more than actually getting what they say they want.
Well, I don't say that their idea of the truth is actually always the truth, but they think it is. I think things are often quite complicated, and the difficulty is when you're talking to like Joe Public, you've got to be relatively simple what you're talking about if you're going to get it across to people and you're going to get support. I think it's all very well going on about various high IQ bloody intellectual arguments that won't get across to most average people.
Yeah.
And I'm not slagging most average people off. They just don't have the time to go into it because they're busy living their life,
Yeah,
I think sorry, Karen, Sergio.
Sorry, I was going to just make a really quick remark about if when they start going on about the JQ and they say you just need to read cultural critique, the average person is going to go, I don't care, I'm not going to read that book just to like get the information that you say I should be getting. It's like
it's a damn long book. I've read it.
Oh right.
And actually, it's a trilogy of books anyway. If you're going to read the whole story. But from the same author, MacDonald, I think he is. Most people are not going to read that because they won't find it entertaining enough to read. Jesus, most people don't read books at all. Come on, these days.
Yeah.
I've just seen something come across my Twitter feed. Maybe you want to talk about this later, but apparently the AfD have just voted to make leaving the European Union one of their key planks of their party platform.
Good.
That was courtesy of Gammon Easter worshipper, by the way.
Good, because if Germany were to leave, that's the end of the EU, basically, because they're the financial heart of it.
And they are the third biggest party as well.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Faust? Faust is in the chat, I see. I'd be interested to see what he thinks of that one.
Faust on suicide watch right now.
I don't think he is. Actually,
no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually watched Faust on, was it your stream, Warlock?
Possibly. I think Faust, he supports like European integration, but I think he said he's made some comments that like make me think he's a bit more.
Yeah, he's not an idiot. He's by no means an idiot. I've got a bit of time for Faust. I'd happily have him on a stream, actually.
I really enjoy Faust. His takes are good.
I think he wants integration with Germany, but I think above all he still considers himself Dutch above everything else. So I think he did like a video where he said like it was right for the Dutch to fight the Germans.
Oh, there you go.
Which is a pretty baseline take. You would think, but I mean,
well, they invaded them, so you can't have to really. But I noticed Faust has just said in the chat that we need to smash the EU. So there you go.
And rebuild the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
based.
Fair enough. That's based. I've got no problem with that.
The EU is dead. Long live the EU.
Yeah, why it wouldn't be the EU though, would it? It'd be something totally different. I don't think France would be part of it for one thing.
Well, here I've got an interesting question for you. If the EU was actually kind of based and right wing, would you be more open towards it? I think I would be actually.
No, not really. Not in terms of Britain joining it. No.
Well, I mean, I was looking through it a few days ago, like sort of like patriotic imagery. I think Academic Agent did a stream on it, but I was just looking at it separate to that, and you can see like a lot of like British imagery is often like the bulldog on the island, isn't it? Like barking off like the European.
We're an island, and we are semi-detached Europeans. We've always looked to the oceans of the world, and the Old Commonwealth, which is one of the things I go on about. You know, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Back in the old days, South Africa. That's always been the British way.
You put it better than I could, but I think I suppose you could call it like Anglo exceptionism, couldn't you? I suppose. We've always considered ourselves somewhat separate, but I think in terms of
we are somewhat separate. We're
to an
on
extent,
an offshore island.
I mean, to an extent, though, I am still a European. I mean, I'm sorry,
we can't escape that. I mean, you know, we are inextricably linked to Europe in some way, and
but semi-detached because of those wonderful Straits of Dover.
Yes, that is true. It's. I think we have a complicated relationship with Europe. But I think there's just something about the EU it's kind of like, oh, come join our gay imperial empire, and it's like, if you're actually going to do this, can you not make it like based, please? Why go to all that effort and make it so gay? It's like the American empire. It's like, wow, you've got a gay empire, great. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I don't disagree with
I've
that.
got no respect. If they actually went around and said we're the American empire and we run the world, I'd actually have a lot more respect for them.
But I mean, I remember looking like way back in the 1980s. I looked this up. Britain in the 1980s, like the top 10 countries that Britons went to for holidays or whatever, always included Australia, South Africa, Canada, New Zealand. Always did. Like always has, because we've all got relatives there.
Yeah.
There's hardly anyone in Britain who hasn't got relatives in one or other of those countries.
Well, I remember reading The Abolition of Britain by Peter Hitchens. Was it?
Yeah.
Actually, no. It may have been a phony victory, actually. And he basically said, yeah, nobody in the UK ever visited Europe. It was just this thing that we just sailed around and never had any contact with. We just went elsewhere because there was no need to. We didn't have to go on holiday, didn't have to visit, didn't have to bother with a sort of Grand Prix of Europe.
Yeah, I never had much interest in going to Europe. I mean, the only bits of Europe I wanted to go to and did go to, apart from where I went with the army and stuff, was like parts of like the ancient world, because I love ancient history, and particularly the Roman Empire and stuff like this. So like I was always happy to go and visit those places, but to visit the modern European places never had much interest to me at all, because they weren't different enough, for one thing. It's a bit like I was never all that interested in visiting the States. I've been to the States a few times, but it was never like my main aim to go and visit America. It was too much like where I came from. So the places I always wanted to go to were like middle of nowhere, you know, and also usually former British or current British places. Like one of the places I love in the world is the British Virgin Islands, which is still British even today. And I love the story of that. Apparently, Queen Victoria once asked the Duke of Wellington, when he was a very old chap, she said, "Duke, can you tell me where the British Virgin Islands are?" And the Duke looked at Queen Victoria, who was a young girl at the time, and said, "I'm not sure, Ma'am, but I'm sure they're a long way from the Isle of Man," which is probably an apocryphal story, but I've always liked it.
Yeah, BVI is a nice tax haven, but the time zone.
Well, it's beautiful. It's also beautiful for yachting. That's the reason I've been there, is like when they're sailing, and it's lovely for that. It's also they've also got the island called Dead Chest, which is where the Long John Silver song comes from. 15 men on a dead man's chest. It's a real place.
But they're not actually British citizens, are they? It's like
it's a British overseas territory. Britain still has 14 overseas territories scattered around the world.
Yeah, but the thing is that a lot of our overseas territories, you can't just move there.
Well, you can if you've got enough money.
Yeah,
like
no,
most
but it's
places.
not. No, but it's so France is different. So, so take overseas France, like French
Yeah.
Guiana or Reunion. I may be butchering the pronunciation, but these are
Reunion,
actually they are literally technically parts of mainland France. So you can fly. You can fly to Reunion if you're a French citizen and live there, but I can't go and move to the Cayman Islands. I can't go and move to BVI.
You could if you had enough money, mate.
Yeah, no, but that's not the point. What I'm saying is that they're not considered like British territory in.
Yeah, they are. They're British overseas
No,
territories.
Duke, you're not. You're really not clocking on to what I'm saying. Like, there's no free movement. I can't.
Well, that's okay. Yeah. But I mean, bear in mind, if there was free movement, that would also mean all the people who lived in those places could come to Britain.
Well, like it really matters at this point. We've got half the world living here anyway.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's true. Tudrig in the chat. Pitcairn Island is not full of Romans. Pitcairn Island got into trouble because they sent a feminist British policeman there. And actually, most of her claims were proved to be false. So there we go. So that's not true. And yeah, well, it was founded by the Bounty mutineers, of course. So I suppose you could say there were Romans in that respect. But yeah, I think half the reason that the British overseas territories have the thing that they have is that people can't just transfer to Britain. Although having said that, it is possible for people from British overseas territories to move to Britain. It's not that difficult. So I'm not sure what you're getting out there, Sojo, really, to be honest. Like, they don't have the same passport that we do, but they can convert that passport relatively easily if they want to.
I personally think it's a mistake. I think that all of these overseas territories should be literally integrated into the mainland and then have a seat in.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're talking about the French territories. The French territories are literally overseas departments of France.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
So you can fly from Paris to French Guiana in South America, and you are still technically, you don't go through any customs.
Yeah, because you're still in France. Yes,
you're still in France.
Yeah, I'm not against that idea. I'm not totally against that idea, to be honest.
I just think that strengthens our hold over them because you integrate them into the mainland, so they're not seen as being sort of like old colonial relics and possessions of the past.
I think the British overseas territory thing came in because of Hong Kong originally, actually. I think that's why they brought it in, if I remember correctly. It's because they didn't want millions of Hong Kong Chinese coming to the UK. But of course, the Conservative Party are now having second thoughts on that idea. So there we go. But I think that was why they changed it. Because it used to be different. And like if you go to, say, the Falkland Islands, for example, the vast majority of the Falkland Islanders actually have British passports.
Yeah.
Because most of them are British descent people.
Yeah.
Like native British descent people, I mean.
Yeah.
So
no, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel a bit, it's a shame that it's just amazing that France still has French Guiana. They've literally got a slice of South America, like a big chunk of it. Why we don't?
But we could have kept British Guyana quite easily. I mean, there was no great push in British Guyana.
We should have done
that.
We should have done that. That could have been our South American paradise. We could all go.
There was no push in British Guyana to become independent. There was no push in Belize in Central America to become independent.
Yeah. Well, Lord Ashcroft is still big over there, isn't he? In Belize, he's it's almost like he runs the place.
Well, the British Army still go there on occasion to do jungle training and this kind of stuff. But there was no push in a lot of the smaller British Empire places, like Swaziland, for example. There was no push in Swaziland for independence. Britain just gave it independence because they didn't want it anymore.
Yeah.
There were a lot of places, particularly some of the smaller areas around the world, where there was absolutely no push for independence at all. Royal Oak is correctly saying in the chat there, the Dutch Antilles is another example. There's no push for independence in that place.
Is that still? That's
Yeah,
a Dutch.
it's still Dutch. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
There's a half Dutch and half French island in the Caribbean as well.
Is that Martinique?
No, St.
No,
Martin.
it's St. Martin.
St. Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a good mate who's an ex-American Marine chap who lives there, with this really pretty French girl who's a lot younger than he is, and they run a yachting business. And he used to have this 50-foot catamaran, and he once sailed it on Christmas Eve from St. Martin to the British Virgin Islands to save my bacon, which was kind of cool of him actually. And he was a guy I knew when I was in the SADF, but a lot of these smaller places, there was no real push for independence. They were given independence, in Britain's case, largely because the British Labour government just didn't want to have those places anymore.
Yeah.
And some of them did actually cost money rather than make money, of course.
I think there was an example of one that joined back. I can't remember. I think it was Anguilla that joined back, didn't it? I seem to remember.
Yeah, it did. It went independent for a while, and now it's still British again. Yes, absolutely.
So what about? I think Malta was an interesting case in the sense that they actually wanted to be part of the UK, and we said no. Is that right?
That's true. They would have got 4 seats in Parliament.
Yeah. It was again. It was the 1960s Labour government under Harold Wilson, worst Prime Minister Britain's ever had, probably. I think he was even worse than Theresa May in many respects.
Can you just imagine if like Malta was just an overseas part of the UK? I mean, that'd be amazing. Just go out there, live out there in the sun, the amazing architecture. Oh, just all of these opportunities that we've.
Also a fabulous naval base that the Royal Navy had built up over 100 years.
Yeah. 77% voted for integration, says Jay Danevan.
Yeah,
I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, no. As I say, a lot of places Britain gave independence to in the 1960s.
Yeah,
didn't want independence at all. You know, the reason Gibraltar's still British is the Gibraltarians said no fucking way. Basically, we don't want to be part of Spain.
Yeah, well, Gibraltar is a place that you can move to.
You can. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, and it's also the taxes are quite high. It's not that good. It's not really a tax haven. So
I worked with a guy who was an ex-Gibraltar policeman in the UK donkeys years ago. Nice chap.
Yeah.
Certainly had no interest in becoming part of Spain. Put it that way. So yeah, as I say, Britain would actually have more overseas places than it does. Except that the Labour Party deliberately gave them away in the 1960s when many of them didn't want independence. But you'll always get a bit of the higher middle class who think, oh yeah, well, if we ran this place, we'd make more money. And those guys were always willing to take over. But that was all that really happened, if you look at it that way. You know, it wasn't that these people were terribly anti-British. They weren't. You know, I mean, bloody Malta was given the George Cross. The whole island was given the George Cross because of World War II when they got bombed to shit all the time.
Yeah. So Niall has a question. Should Anglo-Canadians allow the French Canadians in Quebec, their own country, if they vote for it?
Probably, but I don't know. I'm not Canadian. I would hesitate to express a view on that because I'm not a Canadian. I know there are people in the west of Canada who would actually like to break away from Canada and form a more traditional place, you know, a more Canadian place than this idiot Trudeau is trying to provide.
That's in Alberta. I'm not sure if that'll happen though. But...
Well, I'm not sure any of these breakaway movements will ever work, but I know a lot of traditionalist conservative Canadians who actually much prefer the old Canadian flag, which is basically the red ensign that the Royal Navy used. They actually prefer that flag to the maple leaf flag because they think it's more authentic. Yeah. Or the maple leaf one. You know.
The thing is that all flags these days are sort of like dumbed down. They look like the sort of the regalia of a football team. just like
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
block basic colours with some sort of shitty, emblem. It's just there's a
Well,
bit of finesse.
it's like the Australian flag, the Australian flag, the blue flag with the stars on it and the Union Jack in the corner.
Yeah.
That was actually designed by an Australian schoolgirl in like 1903 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And many Australians, especially most of the old diggers, like the old Australian military guys, get very upset whenever anyone says, "Oh, we should change the flag." In fact,
Well,
most of the
have you seen what the alternative is? Again,
yeah, some of them are terrible. Yeah, they're absolutely vile.
it just looks like a sports team. That's whereas
Yeah.
old style flags have a bit of finesse and detail to them. They got a bit of something about them, a bit of elegance. But these new things. It's like the All Blacks flag. It just looks like.
What with the fern leaf on it? You mean?
Yeah, it's just looks corporate.
Yeah.
Who wants a country to look like a corporate football, like a franchise football team?
Well, the corporate globalists, obviously, but yeah, it's like I always have the old South African flag, or the old one, not the new one, which is everyone's.
The Dutch flag with the
Yeah, it was based on the Dutch East India Company flag, which Faust in the chat will know about. But in the middle, it has the Union Jack. It has the flag of the old Transvaal Republic, the old South African Republic, which everyone called the Transvaal, and also of the Orange Free State. But the basic flag itself is based on the Dutch East India Company flag from the 1600s. It's a damned old flag. And the same thing goes with a lot of these things. I mean, like the modern South African flag, as most people have turned around and said to me, looks like a pair of Y fronts on its side.
Yeah, my mate, one of my mates who's actually watching right now, he's taken to sort of coin collecting, and he said you basically get the same thing in coinage. Like old currency just looks way better, and modern currency just seems to lack something about its design.
Yeah.
What do you? I think actually I've just sort of thought of an exception to the rule, which is stamps. I still think stamps still have something about them that's nice. That they're aesthetically nice to look at.
Yeah, but old stamps are better. I mean, I collected stamps for a little while when I was a young boy, and like the ones I used to really love were all the ones from the old British colonies, all around the world. Those were the ones I really liked. But I've always been a traditionalist and that kind of stuff. I never have changed much. Like I remember, I used to sit there when I was like 8 years old, reading about battles in the Crimean War. So I was never your typical kid, really. But there's a question in the chat: is monarchism increasing in Australia? I will have to ask our resident Australian chap the next time I do an Old Commonwealth stream. But I would say that republicanism isn't doing very well in Australia these days. Like it's not as strong now as it was at around 2000. And just before 2000, they lost the referendum quite badly. So,
well, I think last time we talked about monarchy, and one of the points I was going to make then, but I kind of didn't, is I actually kind of think if in modern times you were ever going to win the argument on monarchy, it's right now.
Yeah.
For a bunch of rather weird and unique reasons, it just seems that now is the time when an argument on monarchy could be won. I don't think we will, but if there ever was a time, it's now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got an emotional argument for monarchy, which is like, it's kind of like represents hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of British history. But my more practical argument is that if the commander-in-chief of your armed forces is the Queen, it's much more difficult for a mere politician to give you shit orders and get away with it. If that makes any sense. because, like, if your ultimate authority is Her Majesty the Queen, that allows a bit of leeway while people look into this stuff. Whereas if your head of state is actually some stinking, scummy politician, well, do any of us trust those guys? I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Niles just basically made the sort of very patriarchal argument, which is the one I've sort of come to really like. When I was younger, I used to default to all the pragmatic arguments, but yeah, the idea that he's the living embodiment of the British people.
Yeah.
He's very much like a father figure, or a otherwise
or a mother figure sometimes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, listen. I mean, I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen many moons ago, and I still take that seriously. But I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, not some political bastard.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's quite strong in Australia still, especially amongst the ex-serviceman community. I mean, I see what 555 said in the chat. Maybe not. We'll see. I mean, I'm not even sure who the next monarch of the UK is going to be. I mean, I'm not certain it's going to be Charles. I don't know about other people. Yeah.
I think if they were smart about it, they would just jump straight to William and Kate. They are
agreed.
Great.
Agreed.
They're one. Even I like them. I'm like, I just think they're a great couple.
Well, I think they're a bit too apologetic still, but I prefer them to Charles quite a lot. I think making Charles the king would be a mistake. I really do, because he's got a lot of really odd left-wing views.
Yeah, I like him.
Still the one in line, though. You can't go back on that, I'm afraid.
True.
Yeah, it's just the way.
But it's been done before. The British monarchy is not an unbroken line. It's not.
Well, Charles might abolish Parliament. Far-fetched.
God, I wish, but yeah.
It's basically tradition at this point.
Yeah, maybe he's been covering up all this time and he's really based, but I have my doubts. I wonder if Charles might even abdicate himself. Actually, it wouldn't totally surprise me. I'm not entirely sure he really wants to be king in some respects.
I think he wants the power. I think there's things he wants to do.
Maybe. I don't think they'll be good if he does, but we'll see.
He's based on architecture, we'll see.
Yeah, he is based on architecture, but he's not based on much else.
Is he? I mean,
I read his book actually.
Yeah, but have you actually seen the fruits of his views, like when he actually puts it into practice?
I like Palmbury myself. But,
yeah, really? It's
I don't hate it. I don't hate it either. I've got to say,
there's not enough greenery there. I don't know if it needs time to develop, but it's just there's too much concrete. There's not enough green. There's no plants. There's no trees. It's just it lacks the kind of patina that you get from old age. But I don't see where the scope is for gardens to sort of grow and to make it look patinaed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't like it at all.
I'll be honest. I went down to the Cotswolds before the lockdown, and they've got some new builds down there, which they've tried to build to look like the rest of the Cotswolds, and they have this sort of sanitized look to them that's kind of odd to the eyes. They should be beautiful. You look at them and you think they should look like the rest of the Cotswolds. They've got everything about them there, but there's something not right about it.
They're not weathered.
No.
But do you think, Adaman, that you would be better not building that, but building something that was just totally modern instead?
No, I like old buildings.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I agree. It's like, I look at modern London, and even compared to the London that I knew for donkey's years, up to the 1990s, as far as I'm concerned, the middle of London has just been totally ruined for the most part with modern buildings.
Yeah, another thing as well is I've spent a bit of time trying to turn an old house and basically modernize it as far as all the features are concerned. It's got modern insulation and stuff like that. It wasn't easy. It was easier than I thought it would be, though. I mean, at the end of the
Hmm.
day, when they built those things, they did know a thing or two.
Yeah, I mean they're just beautiful. You know, they had this. What's the right word? They were in tune with the environment, I think.
Mm.
I'm just going to answer Anglo Nile in the chat. Prince Charles said he wanted to change the Defender of the Faith title to Defender of Faiths.
Yeah,
Well,
that's probably the worst thing.
if that's true, then he should not be king. It's as simple as that. That's just that alone is enough reason for me not to want him to be king.
Mm.
Because it's just ridiculous, you know. The monarch is the head of the Church of England, and all right, the Church of England is cut and a total mess, but it's one of their main things that they're supposed to be the head of the Church of England.
Yeah.
The right of the Prince of Wales is ordained by God. Okay. That's all I could say.
Yeah, and I mean the Prince of Wales was the Black Prince at one stage, for God's sake. You know, a great British warrior in general. You know, whose armor and weapons you could still see in Canterbury Cathedral. So you know,
I mean, the process of being king and having that long-term outlook will probably change quite a few of his positions anyway. Not sure if it'll be for the better, but we'll see.
Faust, Henry VIII only beheaded 2 women. Not all those women. He had loads of wives. He only killed 2 of them. He only killed 2 of them.
Well, hang on
What
a
do you
minute.
think
Is
of
this
coronating a
stream
divorce?
anti-beheading wives now? I mean, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
I mean, when did we think that was a bad idea? I mean, you know.
Wait, didn't he? He had a Spanish wife, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, he did. Yeah, I think so.
It's not. Well, he's not a real nationalist then, was he?
No.
Yeah, well, obviously not. No, obviously not.
Someone's asked me, "What do you think of coronating a divorcee?" I probably still would, to be honest. Actually, no, I probably wouldn't. Actually, I don't know. It depends on the person, probably. But yeah,
It should
I mean,
be
they are
going
nice
forward that you can't marry a divorcee if you're in.
yeah, you wouldn't be able to marry a divorcee anyway. So I think. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but you've also got to look at, like, you know, Prince Charles, for some unknown reason, like that woman who was like much older than him and not very attractive, but that was just her. Whereas his ex-wife, Princess Diana, was a whore, basically. I'm sorry, but she was. You know, there's a difference between like being unfaithful with one chick and like going around with like everyone you can find from Egyptian shopkeepers downwards. So you know, but I was never a Princess Diana fan. I've got to say.
I was just going to say that the fact that he's a divorcee is a way for him to fall on his sword and let Harry and William and Kate take the throne.
I still think that's possible.
So sorry, guys, I'm a divorcee. I couldn't go through with it. I really couldn't.
I still think that is possible. And if the royal family had any brain, it would be what they would be pushing for. Like if the Queen is based, and I think she is to some degree, that's what she should be pushing for, actually. But I was never a Diana fan, I have to say. I think she was a whore.
Okay.
Well, she was. I mean, you know, one
Come
of her
on,
sons.
don't hold back. She was a slapper, wasn't she?
Well, one of her sons is definitely the son of a British Army officer who he closely resembles.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I look at.
Oh man!
I'll be honest. I'm not so sold on this either. To be fair,
I'm totally sold on it, mate.
Do you know what it is? Sometimes I'll look at a photo from one angle and think, oh, he's got the red hair. Yeah, he looks like Hewitt. And then I'll look at him face on and I can just see Charles.
He doesn't look like anything like his brother, whatever, mate. Come on, give me a break.
No, he doesn't look that much like his brother, but he does.
Not at all.
He does still have some Charles in him.
No, he doesn't. He has some Diana in him. I'm sorry. No, that's James Hewitt's son. Absolutely, definitely. I don't care what anyone says. And like that was one of at least 3 or 4 lovers that she had that we know about. So there you go. She was a whore. I'm sorry. And like when all these people were crying at her funeral, it was the most. I was so fucking angry, man. Honestly. Jesus, fuck! Why I was angry. I'm sorry. I really was. That was the most un-British thing I ever saw, and Peter Hitchens was entirely right when he did that book, The Abolition of Britain, and he bookmarked them from Churchill's funeral to Diana's funeral. He was entirely correct.
Yeah, going from very somber to the sort of American wailing. That
over a whore, yeah. Jesus Christ. Mate, I'll tell you what, I've got to say this, all right? Now, I was in the Queen's Regiment, and the reason I was in the Queen's Regiment is my family regiment was the Middlesex Regiment, the 57th Foot and the 77th Foot, the diehards. And I had to join the Queen's Regiment because they got amalgamated into the Queen's Regiment. Subsequently to when I left, the Queen's Regiment itself was destroyed, and it was amalgamated into the Princess of Wales's regiment. And everyone I knew immediately started calling them the Royal Horse. Because that's what they were. Not them, the guys themselves, of course. They were good. But that's who the Princess of Wales was. I'm sorry. And we still get people saying she's good. I mean, the reason that the British Army these days, even if it's outnumbered 50-1, can't use fucking landmines to defend our own soldiers is because of that moron.
Anglo Nile said, I think TV shows such as The Crown shouldn't be allowed. Shouldn't be allowed or aired in the UK. Dramatising the monarchy causes scandal. Well, I mean, I always think that this is one of the things that the Yanks always get completely wrong. Is they just view the royal family purely as like a celebrity family.
Yeah, they think it's a soap opera.
Yeah, they think all the scandals just kind of makes for entertainment rather than, undermining it as a political institution. But
whereas if you went back into the history of the royal family, the scandals that we have these days are nowhere near as bad as the ones that used to happen prior to Queen Victoria. Like Queen Victoria herself was like pretty straight, very straight, in fact.
She wasn't very popular, was she?
Oh no, she wasn't for a while, because when her beloved Prince Albert died, she went into mourning for a very long time and wouldn't do public appearances. She wasn't popular during that period. Before that, she was very popular, and subsequently, when she came out of mourning, she was very popular. So there was a period when she wasn't, but mostly she was extremely popular, and she was an extremely straight woman, if you see what I mean. And tried to live an ideal kind of family life and all this kind of stuff. But prior to that, if you go back to the Regency period in Britain and the 18th century in Britain and look at the royal family, well, there was a hell of a lot of scandals going around, but they were just mostly covered up, But you can't go, if you go back a bit further to, I can't remember if it was George I or George II. One of those chaps actually led the British Army in battle personally and was the last monarch to do so. And like, I'll forgive a lot for a bloke who goes and does his duty. Then you can look at George IV, who had a tattoo from when he was a Royal Navy officer.
Tsar Nicholas II had a tattoo as well, I think.
I didn't know that, but I know George IV did, because from when he was in the Royal Navy, and like most of the Georges, George IV, George V, etc., like the Queen's father, they were all Royal Navy officers and actually saw action in the Royal Navy. They weren't like Charles, who poodled around on a minesweeper for a bit. They actually did see some battle. So I got more room for those guys. So I think that makes up for a bit. If you want, you can have a few sexual scandals, but you actually you front up and you put your life at risk. All right, I got a bit more time for you then, to be honest, because like I may or may not have a few sexual scandals in my own background of one sort or another. Most men do. So
low key humble brag there.
Yeah, I ain't a plaster saint, mate. I'm not a plaster saint. What was it Kipling said? Single men in barracks don't grow into plaster saints. Very true. But I wasn't married when I did it, so there we go. But yeah, I just think, Charles should definitely let his children, his son, take his place. He really should, and for all sorts of reasons.
Mm.
Royal Oak in the chat, top shagger dude. Yeah, I had my moments, mate. I had my moments. Something about a soldier, as the song says, But yeah.
Faust. Dropping the soap in his barracks.
Yeah, right. Oh, Faust, you're so wrong, man, honestly. But there we go. We were aggressively heterosexual back then, mate. It was not like the modern guys, I was talking about this, like, I remember, oh, fuck me. When I'd almost finished my training, they got us to do this exercise with the Junior Leaders Regiment. And the Junior Leaders Regiment are all these army-barmy youngsters who are going to be made lance corporals pretty much as soon as they join the army. And most of them will finish up sergeants. A few of them will get commissioned and all this kind of shit. We had one of our guys who was a little bit overweight, and he was almost caught by these scumbags as we're climbing up a hill with a tree, because we had to on the exercise. And like, there's me and about 5 or 6 other guys go down the hill, and we're using SLR rifle butts to hit these wanks. So they didn't capture our mate. We were aggressively heterosexual back then, man, I can tell you. If there'd been any girls in that training exercise, they would have been screaming and crying and God.
Okay.
It was funny. It was great. It was just great. We were just being good comrades. I'm bashing a few junior leaders in the nose with a rifle butt. It's okay. We were soldiers. We weren't like, bank clerks or something like that. But yeah, that wouldn't be allowed these days, I don't think. But anyway. Oh dear. Funny.
Faust,
proud Anglo tradition. Faust, you do realise that you're
sodomy in the lash.
No, hang on, Faust. You do realise that you're quoting Winston Churchill there, don't you? Because that's what Winston Churchill said the proud traditions of the Royal Navy were. So you're actually quoting Winston Churchill, and he's as wrong as you are in saying that, of course. It just shows how little Winston Churchill really understood about the Royal Navy.
I did have a sense of humour.
What, Churchill?
Yeah.
Maybe. Do you know that when he was going down on the Egyptian railway towards the Sudan, like his regiment, I think he was in the 8th Hussars, if I remember correctly, but he got a transfer because his mother was a upper class whore. Sorry, which she was. And that's how he got
telling us.
No, Winston Churchill's mother I'm talking about now, Jenny Churchill, who was an American.
No, yes, precisely, as you keep telling us.
Yeah, I mean, she was an American millionaire's daughter. And so anyway, Jenny Churchill was actually an upper class whore, absolutely. Like even worse than Diana. That's how Churchill managed to get a transfer from the 8th Hussars to the 21st Lancers for the Sudan campaign. And as he was going down, he was with a load of other junior officers from the 21st Lancers. And Churchill was going on and on and on, like he did, like saying how the strategy was wrong and all this kind of shit. And the officers actually bundled him under the seat and kept him under the seat for about 4 hours because he was being such a prig, which is an old British term. Churchill wasn't popular with the other junior officers, he was brave enough, like he took part in the charge of 21st Lancers, didn't use a sword because apparently he hurt his arm. He had the most modern German Mauser pistol, which he shot loads of dervishes with because he couldn't use his sword, apparently. But he was brave enough. He took part in the charge. And then wrote a book saying how Kitchener had no idea about how to win a war after Kitchener had totally convincingly not only won the war, but then gone to Fashoda and told the French to piss off, which they did. So, but so when Churchill said that the Royal Navy's traditions came down to sodomy and the lash, it just really explained how little Churchill knew about the Royal Navy, if I'm going to be absolutely honest. And I'm not, I don't hate Churchill like some people do, but I'm no big Churchill fan either. So I just thought it was funny that Faust ended up quoting him. So the eternal Anglo. If there was an eternal Anglo, it was Churchill. Did Churchill really escape from a war prison? No, he did. He did escape from a war prison. Yes, and that's what made him quite famous. So he did. Yeah, he did manage to escape with a lot of help from a lot of other British officers, which he subsequently did not return. It must be said. But there we go. Churchill was Anglo-Nile. Churchill was very good at English. He wrote great English. He was crap at Latin and Greek and all that stuff. But he was very good at English. Am I saying sodomy and the lash aren't popular Anglo pastimes then? Yes, I am saying they're not popular Anglo pastimes. I have to say I have never indulged in sodomy, never supported sodomy, have never liked anyone who does sodomy, so no.
Okay. I've spent 15 minutes talking about sodomy.
Well, we haven't been. We've been talking about Churchill, but there we go. Yeah, Churchill's written loads of stuff, but Churchill actually said towards the end of World War II that, this is going to be fabulous history and I intend to write it, which he did. And it's still largely accepted. And the problem that you have nowadays is that, like, historians these days have gone one of two ways. You have really excellent revisionist historians who write stuff like Splendid Isolation, for example, which is what this stream is named after, really. And then you have all these guys who are infected with Marxism who write crap, basically. So that's pretty much where we come from. But anyway, I've been talking too much. So Adaman, you haven't said enough in this stream, and I have to go to the loo. So you're up next, mate.
Oh well, let's go through some based Prince Philip things, shall we?
Certainly, sounds like a good idea to me.
I put a link in the chat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw those ones. Yeah, let me get those ones up. So, number 1, British women can't cook.
My grand's quite a good cook.
Yeah, my nan's a good cook too.
I'm not sure that's true. Well, I haven't had any non-English grands to compare it to. So.
Oh yeah, I've seen this one somewhere else. You're a woman, aren't you? He said to a Kenyan after accepting a small gift from a local woman.
Beast.
You're too fat to be an astronaut. I saw a different version of this quote actually. Hang on, where is it? Okay, yeah. So to Andrew Adams, a 13-year-old who said he wanted to be an astronaut, he said, "You could do with losing a bit of weight."
Yeah.
Fighting the obesity epidemic. Good man. Oh
What did
yeah,
I
see,
miss?
I remember this one actually being on the news. Do you work in a strip club? He said to a 24-year-old sea cadet, Elizabeth Rendell.
Yeah,
How was a 24-year-old a sea cadet?
I don't know. Son of Britain's brought up in the chat that he told a British exchange student who was in China that if he stayed any longer he'd get slitty eyes. And there was massive like media like fucking kicking off about that over here, but apparently in China they thought it was really funny. So there was like loads of like Chinese articles like praising him for it. So but they didn't care about it. So.
Yeah, I heard about as well. Someone in chat said they still throw in spears. Yeah, I heard about this one as well when he went out and saw some tribe and was like, "You still throwing spears?"
Two Drinks brought up the one when he said that the Cantonese would eat everything that has four legs and isn't a chair. And I think it was two legs and wings and isn't an aeroplane. I think that he said as well. And I think the other one was, I think swims and isn't a submarine. I can't remember, but pretty funny one anyway.
Oh, Son of Britain's come up with a good one there. There actually is an island in the Pacific where Prince Philip was a god, according to the locals.
Oh yeah, I saw about this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a true story.
He's ascended all the other royals.
Well, it's like that story of oh Christ, what emperor was it? The guy who took over after Nero. The emperor, when he was dying, he turned around and said, "I think I'm becoming a god," which I thought was pretty cool, because like Roman emperors were generally deified. So
Here's another one. He said, "I don't think a prostitute is more moral than a wife, but they are doing the same thing."
Is that what Prince Philip said?
Apparently, yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's pretty based, I guess, if you look at it. But then you got to remember he was married to Her Majesty the Queen, so that makes it even more based. So Vespasian, thank you, Catamon. It was Vespasian.
So apparently, to a female solicitor, he once said, "I thought it was against the law for a woman to solicit."
Ooh. Yeah, he did come up with a lot of non-PC stuff, which I think was excellent, really.
Supposedly, he said to that diversity dance team on Britain's Got Talent, "Are you all one family?" And apparently, he looked at a fuse box in a Scottish factory and said, "It looks as though it's been put in by an Indian." Although he later backtracked and said, "I meant to say cowboys."
Yeah, fair enough.
He apparently said to a man named Atul Patel at a reception for influential Indians, he said, "There's a lot of your family in tonight." He also said to the president of Nigeria, who was in his national dress, "You look like you're ready for bed."
Yeah, reasonable. Triple Five saying he said to an Australian Aboriginal, "Do you still throw spears at each other?" Now, I knew an Australian Aboriginal who said that the elders sometimes do still throw spears at people who do bad things. But there we go.
Anglo Nile pointed out that he said, "What exotic part of the world do you come from?" He asked to a Tory politician in Warwick, whose parents are Jamaican. He replied, "Birmingham." On Ethiopian art, he said it looked like the kind of thing my daughter would bring home from a school art lesson.
Yeah, I'd say to Cardamon in the chat, Was Prince Philip based? I'd say, yeah, he was, pretty much.
Definitely.
Because he didn't give a shit. He just said what he thought.
Apparently, he because she worked in the film industry, he once asked Kate Blanchett if she could fix his DVD player.
You got to think that some of that was like him taking the piss, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, he was at an Elton John performance as well, and he muttered to himself he wished they'd turn the microphone off.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't blame him for that one either. Was he singing Candle in the Wind?
He said on stress counselling for servicemen, he said, we didn't have counsellors rushing around every time somebody let off a gun. You just got to get on with it.
Yeah, he was on HMS Valiant, I think, the battleship. I think that was the ship he was serving on at the Battle of Mapatan, when the Royal Navy absolutely blew to pieces 3 Italian heavy cruisers at very close range at night. And the British aircraft carrier actually stayed in the line and fired his 4.5-inch guns at these Italian cruisers.
I heard a story that he was responsible for saving a ship, like through his actions. Is that true?
Well, I don't know, man. I haven't looked into his history enough. I will have a later look, but it's quite possible. I mean, he was a Royal Navy officer, so maybe.
Mm.
The funny thing was, there was some left-wing idiot who was trying to claim that he was a refugee because his family were chucked out of Greece after the revolution. Because he was related to the Greek royal family, of course. You know? Yeah. My dad always said he was a Greek. So, although my dad didn't dislike him. He actually thought he was okay. But yeah, his family were chucked out of Greece after the left-wing revolution. The Brits only barely stopped Greece becoming communist, and so you had some left-wing idiot trying to say, "Oh yeah, Prince Philip was a refugee, so we should take more refugees."
Yeah, I mean they'll literally say anything. So
yeah, I know.
I think he had a pretty torrid time during the Greece thing. I think his mother ended up in asylum for 6 or 7 years, didn't she?
Yeah, she did, but I don't think that had much to do with that. I think she was just a bit loony.
Well, maybe.
And you know, his dad sent him to boarding school. Well, what upper class dad didn't send their kids to boarding school in those days? Everyone did, you know.
Mm. He also apparently after the Dunblane shooting said if a cricketer suddenly decided to go into a school and batter a lot of people to death with a cricket bat, are you going to ban cricket bats? And the person who posted this tweet, who doesn't like him and is trying to essentially post this stuff to shame him, labelled this one dumb as fuck, which I thought was kind of funny because now we have truck attacks in Christmas markets and bombs in arenas full of kids. So I kind of feel that, you know, the whole gun thing never exactly aged very well.
Well, UK should ban pointy sticks because, you know, you can stab people with pointy sticks. Patriotic Archive, did he have Greek ancestry? No, not really, because the Greek royal family weren't really Greek, so no, not really.
I mean, all European royal families are actually Anglo, so you know, there's that.
Yeah. I mean, like even the Kaiser was half English. If you go on the royal family, although of course Queen Victoria's family also had quite big German bits as well.
I can almost hear across the channel Faust furiously typing in the comments box.
That's why I said what I just said, is because I knew Faust was going to say, "Oh yeah, Saxe Coburg and Hanover and all this stuff." But the fact is, all of the European royal families were more or less related. All of them were. And after Queen Victoria had done her stuff with all the children she had, they were nearly all related to the British royal family.
Yeah, Niall just pointed that out in the chat. Yeah. So is it Cademan? He said Prince Philip saved his ship using smoke to make the ship look damaged during the Battle of Sicily when the Luftwaffe bombed the Allied fleet. That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Good thinking too. It's quite intelligent. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I never had a problem with Prince Philip because he did fight bravely in World War II. I think someone pointed out he actually won the DSO, the Distinguished Service Order, at Mappeton. So yeah, I mean, he did his job. And you can't be a coward and be a Royal Navy officer because, if the ship goes down, you're buggered, mate.
Yeah. I'm trying to look to see if there's any more good corkers. There's one here. This is a bit risque. Speaking about smoke alarms to a woman who'd lost 2 sons in a fire. They're a damn nuisance. I've got one in my bathroom, and every time I run my bath, the steam sets it off.
Well, that could have been me a couple of weeks ago, Adam, when I had mine going on. Jesus. It was so. I've actually got 4 in this place, which is not my choice. They were already here. I really want to get rid of 2 of them, to be honest. I think 2 is enough.
When you got them to go off, and then we were talking on stream for a bit, and then like 10-15 minutes later it went off again, I was sitting there thinking, like, his house isn't slowly burning down behind him while he's chatting away on stream, is he?
Oh, it's like that meme. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Me as a metaphor for the Western world, that would be quite amusing, actually. I think. God's own prototype got no German monarchy now. Does Germany still have much of a kind of aristocracy left?
I think there's people with some castles, but
I'm talking about, are any of the Vons and these people still around?
There's a couple of princes still around, isn't there?
Yeah, there must be some, surely, because the Germany had a huge royal family because they had all these kings of different bits of Germany before Prussia unified it, didn't they? Here we go. Faust. The von Habsburg family is still quite powerful. Most of the old German royal families are big business and banking interests, Duke of Mecklenburg and the House of Wittelsbach, for example. There you go. So they are still around. Thought maybe they were. I mean, like most of the guys who tried to kill Hitler in July 1944 were German aristocrats in the German military. I mean, they were the only guys who actually made an effective attempt to get rid of the bugger. Incidentally, I don't know if anyone saw it, but I put it up on the Discord. I put up a Mark Feldman video from not long ago, and the second Iron Cross that Hitler earned in the First World War was actually given to him by a German Jewish officer, ironically enough.
Yeah.
And it's even got the citation of what the German Jewish officer wrote about how brave Hitler was. I don't know, man. that was curious, You'd think if someone did that, you would think, well, he was a good bloke, I don't know. I would if someone gave me a bloody medal. Not that anyone did, but I'd think, well, he must be a good man. But apparently not if you're Adolf, babes. Which is a bit curious to me. Yeah, he did win 2 Iron Crosses. The second of which was the higher award. I think it was an Iron Cross First Class, the second one. And that was given him by a German Jewish officer in World War I in 1918, I think. So there we go. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up because we're going to, if I'm talking about history. I was watching Apostolic Majesty's stream a couple of weeks ago. Good channel. People should go and subscribe to him. And generally speaking, his history is great. But he turned around and said on that stream, if America had not joined the war in the First World War, in 1917, the German 1918 offensive would have succeeded. And that is absolute and total nonsense. The German 1918 offensive was aimed at the junction between the British and French armies, and mostly fell on the British army, and it pushed the British back a long way. But the attacks were stopped by the British, and it has to be said, Commonwealth forces. There were loads of Aussies and Canadians and New Zealanders involved in it as well. And they actually eventually stopped the Germans. And then they counterattacked and like pushed the Germans back for over 100 days. Thank you, Patriotic Archive. You're entirely correct. The British and Commonwealth Army won that war in the 100 Days Offensive that the British then launched. Like, there were about 500,000 Americans in France by the end of 1918, but the vast majority of them never even saw action in the trenches, never mind actually being involved in an attack. There was only a couple of divisions of Americans that really saw any action at all. And so the idea that American intervention stopped the German 1918 offensives is complete nonsense. Just not true. Faust, yes, I know you're right that the original German laws exempted not even half Jews. I think they exempted all Jews at one stage from who'd fought in the war from their stuff. But those protections gradually got weaker and weaker, as I understand it.
Duke, I'm going to need to go in a minute.
Right.
So I don't know if you're going to keep going. If you are, I'll drop off then.
Yeah, unless if everyone else needs to go, then we'll stop. But otherwise, we'll go on for, I don't know, where are we? We'll go on for another 20 minutes to get to the half hour, unless everyone else wants to go.
Yeah, I can hold off for 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll go
we'll go down to the half hour. If you need to go, Sergio, let's call me. Thank you for coming on.
I'm going to go. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Right,
See ya.
Yep.
All right, good night.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, son of Britain, Hitler was a messenger bloke. He was a trench runner, which was a dangerous job. He was brave. I'm never going to say he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of, and maybe this is me being a bit ignorant of it, but I've always kind of viewed America's role in World War One as purely an excuse for them to stretch out into sort of European influence.
Yep. And Woodrow Wilson was an absolute arse.
Yeah.
Like, really a scumbag. Detestable man in all respects. And to be fair, there are American nationalists I know who agree with that.
Yeah, I mean they kind of tried to forget about Woodrow Wilson, didn't they? They try and steer everything towards Roosevelt, who's very much still considered the sort of apple in the eye of American politics.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, because in some ways he was more National Socialist than the Germans were, but there we go. But yeah, Woodrow Wilson was a big scumbag. I mean, like, most of the mistakes made at the Versailles Treaty were as a result of Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, and like as well, there was lots of shit like he wasn't willing to help out the whites in any way in the Russian Civil War or anything like that. In fact, kind of threw them under the bus, to be fair.
Well,
the same way that the Labour Party here did, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's also like Wilson was instrumental in setting up the League of Nations, which was kind of a precursor to the United Nations, and equally as stupid. But then the American Congress wouldn't sign the treaty, so America never joined it. So he set up this ridiculous nonsense, and then America didn't even join in the first place.
Yeah.
A very bad president, and America's effect on World War One, in my opinion, was like almost entirely bad, and it certainly didn't tip the war. I mean, if the war had gone into 1919, it might have done, because of the numbers of fresh troops they were providing, but it didn't. And the reason it didn't is the Germans called for an armistice when the British and Commonwealth troops, you know, the British, the Australians and Canadians and New Zealanders, were almost on the border of Germany. And it was obvious that the German army couldn't stop them. There was no stab in the back, as Hitler claimed. The German army was defeated in the field, and it was mostly defeated by the British and Commonwealth soldiers.
Hmm.
Like the French army suffered enormous losses in the first couple of years of the war, and then again at Verdun, which was a deliberate German attempt to bleed the French army white, which also partially bled their own army white. But then in 1917, the French army had very, very serious mutinies, and they're much more serious than most average observers these days realize. Like the French army had to be handled from 1917 onwards very, very carefully, or they just wouldn't attack.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying there were not loads of brave Frenchmen, because of course there were, but as an army, you couldn't just do what you liked with the French army from 1917 onwards. And that's the reason that the 100 days was so important, because the British and Australian, Canadian, and New Zealand forces didn't have any of those mutinies at all, and were still willing to attack, and they did. And the 100 days is what really broke the German army and made Ludendorff to tell the Kaiser, "Look, we've got to have an armistice." And they were defeated. They were defeated in the field. This is another thing that your PA types will never admit to, because you mustn't be pro-British if you're patriotic alternative. I guess that's where the alternative comes from. But those guys in the First World War, and like, because I'm an old bastard, I met loads of those guys when I was a teenager. I used to work for a fishing and preservation society, and I'd go around selling people 50p day tickets to go fishing and stuff, And like loads of the guys I used to talk to were First World War veterans, because they were old dudes fishing. And like they were just amazed that this young chap who was like 15, 16 was happy to listen to their war stories. So they regale me for hours with these fascinating stories, which were sometimes about fighting, but also often about when they were on leave and all this kind of shit, and really, really interesting. And they were the blokes who actually won the First World War. And there was no stab in the back to Germany. They lost because they lost. They launched this enormous, after they'd sent Lenin into Russia to cause the revolution. This is another thing, of course, which your PA types won't talk about. Like, the communism in Russia was as a result of the German High Command, really. After they'd sent Lenin in Russia to cause the revolution, they then had all these hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the Eastern Front they could send to the Western Front, and they did. And they mostly attacked the British and Commonwealth forces, and they pushed them back a long way, but eventually they were bloody well stopped. And then the British launched a massive counterattack that for almost 4 months did nothing but push the Germans back. They were thoroughly defeated, and they were defeated in the field. Faust says there was a stab in the back. The Democrats launched a massive strike. Well, yeah, you could say that, but then you could also say that when the High Seas Fleet, which was thoroughly scared to death at Jutland in 1916 and never really came out again after that in full strength, when the High Seas Fleet was ordered to go and face the Royal Navy, which by 1918 was even more powerful than it had been in 1916, the sailors just refused and said, no, thank you, we're all going to die. Call that stab in the back if you want.
Well, I mean, Son of Britain said we should have permitted residency for the Tsar and his family. Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
My great-grandmother was alive during that time, and she said she said that it was a lot of it was pressure that the Labour Party were putting on, where they were saying that that the royal family can't be seen to be giving them special treatment just because they're their family. I don't know. I don't know if that is actually reflective of the actual politics going on at the time. But
Yeah, it might have been, but I believe the Tsar and his family should have been allowed to come to Britain.
yeah, they should have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, I do.
Mm.
I would say to Ango Nile in the chat, I'm talking about World War One, not World War Two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another thing I think was and this was later. This was in World War Two. Another sort of big betrayal of them was when we handed the Cossacks back over to the Russians.
Totally
End of
agree.
World War Two in Austria.
Totally agree. Don't disagree with that at all, man.
Mm.
That was one of the most shameful things Britain's ever done, actually.
Mm. I think the reason that I think the reason that we didn't allow the Russian monarchy to come to the UK was because they were worried that a lot of the socialists in the UK, a lot of the working class socialists, had supported the war, and they were worried if they brought them here that it might kick them off. I think that was the reason.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Alman said, and
I missed that, but sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Alman said, but on the other hand, that was cowardice and bad.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. That was shit. And as people said in the chat, handing over those anti-communist Russians to the Soviets, to me, that's one of the worst things the British have ever done. I think it was disgusting and completely anti-British. Faust, you are not right. Britain did not hand over Eastern Europe to the communists in both world wars. That's just not true. In the Second World War, which is what most people talk about, Churchill only realized in 1944, and not early 1944, that basically the Americans and the Soviets were going to do a deal that was going to push him out. And my criticism of Churchill has always been that because of his American mother, he never realized that America was not Britain's friend. America, up until 1939, and even beyond in many sections of America, regarded the British Empire as a rival, not a mate. And if you don't get that, you don't get anything about what happened in the Second World War. And a lot of people in Europe don't get it. And a lot of British people don't get it either, because the people who run us these days don't want us to get it. You know, like Chamberlain got that. Chamberlain realized that America was not Britain's friend. Churchill didn't, because he had this American upper-class whore of a mother.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that there's slowly getting a bit more of a nuanced understanding of Chamberlain. Like about 10 years ago, you couldn't, people would literally bring up the term Chamberlain as an insult.
Yeah.
They go, "Oh, you're an appeaser like that Chamberlain," and you used to sit there and think you literally don't know shit about Chamberlain.
The thing was that Chamberlain knew that Britain could not win a short war because our army was far too small. The Air Force was okay, the Navy was fine, it was the biggest Navy in the world, but it had to defend the whole British Empire. And we didn't only have to worry about Germany, we had to worry about Italy in the Mediterranean and also Japan in the Far East. But the British Army, which was what you needed to defeat Germany, was tiny. And Britain could not win a short war. And the other thing that Chamberlain knew was Britain couldn't afford a long war. This is why you got to the ridiculous situation wherein, I think it was 1942, an American cruiser pulled out of Cape Town with the very last British gold reserves on board going to America, because Britain was totally bankrupt. And that was where Churchill took Britain. And I'm sorry, I'm not one of these people who says Churchill caused World War II. He didn't. He wasn't even in power when World War II started. Hitler caused World War II. Let's not fool ourselves. But Chamberlain knew it was not a good thing to do. My only real criticism of Chamberlain was that after he got fooled at Munich, he was so fucking niggled with Hitler that he gave the Poles, who were also a military dictatorship in 1939, he gave them the red British war button. And I certainly wouldn't have done that. But Chamberlain didn't. But that's my only real criticism of Chamberlain. Like, the Royal Navy had been planning for a war that started in 41 or 42, when it would have been much stronger than it actually was at the time. So anything a British Prime Minister did to delay Britain joining World War II would have been a good thing. We would have been immensely stronger. And Chamberlain's only problem, as far as I'm concerned, is he gave the British war button to Poland. And, like, you never do that. You never give another nation that choice. You do it yourself.
Mm.
But that's my only criticism of Chamberlain. And I've got less criticisms of Chamberlain than I do of Churchill. In many respects.
Yeah.
But you still can't slag Winston Churchill off as a British nationalist, because the overwhelming vast majority of average ordinary people are not going to go into it enough to even understand it.
Well, yeah, I think I've given the take before that I think people have the opinion they have on Churchill and it will never change. But I'll comment on Faust in the chats. Comments about the British Army, and I just want to point out, like, he has said before, like, Germany did invade the Netherlands. I think they didn't even declare war, right? So I don't know why he's like, oh, you handed over the Eastern Europe to the Bolsheviks by fighting the Germans, when Germans didn't behave particularly well, especially massacred a lot of people in churches in northern France, and obviously invaded the Netherlands without a declaration of war. So I don't know.
Like, you literally
we cannot
be...
stand Nazi simping on the stream. Okay, so
I mean, you can't be a British nationalist as well and look at that map of Germany controlling Norway all the way around to Belgium and France, kind of hemming us in, and say, yeah, this is a situation we could put up with.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say you could. But when Britain declared war, it should have been Britain's choice. Not the military dictatorship in Poland's choice, who we couldn't help anyway, because the French weren't willing to do so, and the French had most of the army troops.
The thing is, though, war was still avoidable even at that point. Even at the point that Chamberlain had declared it, it could still be reversed up until he went into Belgium and France.
Maybe. I certainly think. Britain shouldn't have declared war until Hitler invaded the West. It was ridiculous declaring war when he invaded Poland. All that did was give Germany 6-month notice. You're going to end up fighting the British, So I think that was foolish.
He's brought up. I thought it was 1923 that the Soviet Union invaded Poland, because I remember it was Trotsky and Stalin with the
It was early 20s, and the Poles defeated them outside Warsaw.
I seem to remember we did provide some help. I might be wrong about that, but I mean, we couldn't have, like, it wasn't on the same scale as the German war, was it, against the Allies? So it's not really a comparable situation.
I don't think the British gave much help to it, but then Poland had traditionally been run by Russia. Poland's been
not even that. I mean, how much
Poland's been run by Russia more often than it's been run by the Poles.
Well, not even that. I mean, how could we have even? I mean, it's a landlocked country, isn't it? I mean, it's got a tiny port at Danzig, but I mean, couldn't really send our entire land army to defend the Polish from the Soviets. Could be really.
I'm trying to work out what Faust means by you backstabbed your allies. What allies?
He's saying we backstabbed Poland when they got invaded by the USSR. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, but Poland was more France's ally than ours.
Yep, absolutely right. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, Faust. Poland was never a British ally then. When?
It was, I think. We did guarantee Poland, I think.
What, in the First World War?
No, after, before they were invaded by the Soviets. I'm not an expert on this period of history, I'll be honest, but
Well, maybe we did, but I can't recall when we did, to be honest.
Hmm.
No, okay, so Faust is saying we declared war to save Poland. No, we didn't. We declared war because Chamberlain was so fucking niggled about the Austrian painter going back on the Munich deal that he decided, and the French followed him, in giving Poland the war bond. But France, by that stage, had made it perfectly clear that they actually weren't going to attack Germany. And Britain didn't have the military forces to do so on land. So it was ridiculous. So I don't think anyone backstabbed Poland in World War II. Aside from the fact that, like I said, Poland itself was a military dictatorship prior to 1939. So I don't know why Britain's supposed to particularly care about Poland anyway, really.
Hmm.
I would have gone with Chamberlain's original speech about a country that's far away of which we know nothing. But that's me, and I'm a cynical bastard. So, you know.
God's Own says, let's agree to blame the French. And I kind of feel that's a good point to end on.
Yeah, well, I guess they're always a good handle. All right, guys, we're going to play one more tune before we go. This is going to be another tune from the excellent channel, Patriotic Archive, which I would strongly suggest everyone should go and subscribe to. So here we go. All right, there we go, gents. I was Cover the North, which was the regimental march for the 92nd, the Gordon Highlanders. My old dad used to have a good Scottish mate who was a 92nd Highlander, and they were a very fine regiment. So there we go. That's our stream for today. Go well, and we'll see you soon. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe.